The street was loud with horns shouting vendors and hurried footsteps when everything shattered in a single second. A black SUV swerved too late. Metal slammed into a small street food cart, sending pots and burning oil across the road. A man in a torn designer suit lay sprawled on the asphalt, blood pooling beneath him. His luxury watch kept ticking calm and cruel as his chest barely moved. People rushed closer, but only to record. Some laughed, others whispered. No one touched him. Then a young street food girl pushed through the crowd and dropped to her knees. With trembling hands, she pressed her scarf against his wound, ignoring the guards yelling for her to step back. "He's important," they shouted. "You're nothing." She stayed. The man's eyes fluttered open for a breathless moment. He looked straight at her and whispered a name that didn't belong on the street.
Before we go on, what country are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Share it in the comments. And if stories of kindness and justice matter to you, subscribe and stay with us.
Amara Iroka woke before the city did. Long before office lights flickered on, and long before car horns began their daily argument with the morning air, she was already on her feet. The small room she shared with her younger brother was quiet except for his slow, uneven breathing. Chinedu slept curled on the thin mattress, one arm wrapped around a school book as if it might disappear if he let go. Amara moved softly so she wouldn't wake him. She washed her face from a plastic bowl, tied her hair back, and stepped outside with the careful urgency of someone who could not afford to be late, not even once. The street was still gray with early light when she pushed her cart into position near the bus stop. It was not the best spot in the market, but it was the one she could afford. The wheels creaked as she locked them in place. She wiped the surface, clean set out her pots, and lit the small burner beneath them. By the time the sun rose fully, the smells of frying dough and simmering stew drifted through the air. Workers on their way to construction sites slowed down. Bus drivers shouted destinations. A few familiar faces nodded at Amara as they passed. She smiled back even when her arms already ached. Amara had learned early that dignity did not come from comfort. It came from showing up every day no matter how tired or afraid you were. Her parents had died within months of each other, first her mother, then her father, leaving her with grief debt and a younger brother who still cried for them at night. There had been no relatives willing to take them both in. So she stayed. She worked. She became both sister and parent. Mourning Amara, an elderly man said, handing her a few worn bills. "Good morning, Papa," she replied, scooping food into a small container. She added a little extra without comment. He noticed, as he always did, but said nothing. Gratitude, like pride, could be loud, even when silent. By mid-morning, the street was alive. A group of school children laughed as they passed. Office workers in crisp shirts complained about prices they could easily afford. A woman in high heels wrinkled her nose as she walked by as if the smell of honest food offended her. Amara pretended not to notice. Around noon, the mood shifted. A white pickup truck rolled slowly down the street, its presence immediately tightening the air. Two uniformed city officers jumped out, their boots heavy against the pavement. Conversations dipped. Vendors glanced at one another, some already reaching for folded notes. Amara felt her stomach sink. Chief Adewale Ajayi was not with them today, but his shadow didn't need a body to be felt. Everyone knew how this worked. No receipt, no warning, just demands. One of the officers stopped in front of Amara's cart. He leaned in, inspecting it with false interest. "License?" he asked. Amara swallowed. "Sir, I renewed it last month. I can bring," he cut her off with a raised hand. "You know the rules. This area has new regulations." "I wasn't informed," she said quietly. He smiled a thin, humorless line. "That's not my problem." She looked around, hoping for support. No one met her eyes. Survival had taught them when to disappear. How much, she asked, her voice steady despite the heat creeping up her spine. The officer named an amount that made her chest tighten. It was nearly half of what she would earn that day. "I don't have that," she said. "Please, I'm just trying to—" The officer reached for her cart. Panic surged. "Wait!" Amara said quickly, stepping forward. "Please, give me today. I'll move," he snapped. A small hand tugged at her skirt. Chinedu stood behind her school bag slung over one shoulder, eyes wide. "Amara," he whispered. "Is something wrong?" The officer glanced at him, then back at Amara. For a moment, something like discomfort flickered across his face. Then it was gone. "Today," he said curtly, stepping back. "Tomorrow, no excuses." He walked away laughing with his partner as if nothing had happened. Amara exhaled slowly, her knees weak. She knelt in front of Chinedu and forced a smile. "Go to school," she said. "I'll be fine." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said, brushing dust from his shirt. "Be quick after class." He nodded and ran off, glancing back once before disappearing into the crowd. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Customers came and went. Money exchanged hands. But Amara's thoughts kept circling the same fear tomorrow. She sold her last portion just as the sun dipped lower, turning the buildings gold. She counted her earnings twice, then 3 times. It still wasn't enough. As she packed up, a black SUV passed at the far end of the street. It slowed briefly, then moved on, swallowed by traffic. Amara barely noticed it. Cars like that belonged to another world, one that never touched hers. She pushed her cart home as dusk settled. The weight felt heavier than usual. At their room, she cooked a simple meal. Chinedu talked about school, about a test he thought he failed, about a teacher who said he was smart. "You are," Amara said, meaning it with her whole heart. That night, after Chinedu fell asleep, Amara sat alone by the window. She looked at her hands, burned, scarred, tired. She wondered how long she could keep going like this. She wondered what would happen if tomorrow went wrong. A strange unease settled over her, thick and persistent. Somewhere across the city, in a quiet office high above the streets, Pascal signed documents without reading them twice. His life moved with precision and speed, insulated from small fears like unpaid fees and broken carts. 2 lives traveling toward each other on invisible lines. Amara closed her eyes and whispered a short prayer. Not for wealth, not for miracles, but for strength. She did not know that by the next afternoon her cart would be gone, her life shattered, and her name spoken in rooms she had never imagined entering. The afternoon heat pressed down on the street like a weight. By the time Amara returned to her spot near the bus stop, the air shimmered above the asphalt and tempers ran short with every passing minute. She wiped her forehead with the edge of her apron and adjusted the burner beneath her pot. The stew bubbled steadily, its familiar scent grounding her. She worked faster than usual. Tomorrow loomed in her thoughts like a wall she might not be able to climb. Customers came in waves. Some complained about the heat. Others joked, asking for extra portions. Amara smiled when she could, counting each coin with careful attention. She told herself she would figure something out. She always did. Traffic thickened as the day leaned toward evening. Horns blared, buses lurched to sudden stops, motorcycles weaved between cars with reckless confidence. The street grew louder, sharper, more impatient. Then the sound changed. A deep engine hum cut through the noise, smooth and controlled. Heads turned almost instinctively. A line of dark vehicles approached, polished and imposing, pushing forward with the certainty of people who expected the road to move for them. Amara glanced up briefly. Black SUVs were not unusual in the city, but something about this convoy felt different. Too fast, too close together. "Careful," someone shouted. It happened in seconds. A motorcycle swerved unexpectedly to avoid a bus pulling out without warning. The lead SUV jerked sideways. Tires screamed. Metal slammed into metal. The impact sent a violent shock through the street. Amara felt the hit before she fully saw it. Her cart was struck hard from the side. Pots flew. Oil spilled in a burning arc across the pavement. She was thrown backward, landing hard on her hip. The world seemed to tilt sound, stretching and snapping like a torn fabric. When she pushed herself up, her cart was ruined. One wheel bent inward at an impossible angle. The burner lay on its side, flame licking the ground before sputtering out. And then, she saw him. A man lay several feet away from the vehicle, sprawled on the road as if dropped there. His suit was torn, darkened with blood along the shoulder and side. One shoe had come off. His chest rose shallowly, uneven. For a heartbeat, the street froze. Then the noise rushed back in. "Did you see that someone record this? Ah, that cart is finished." Phones appeared. Voices overlapped. A few people laughed nervously, excitement buzzing in their words. Amara's ears rang. Her first instinct was to run to her cart to gather what little could be saved. But her eyes kept returning to the man on the ground. He wasn't moving. She stood, ignoring the pain shooting through her side, and took a step toward him. A uniformed guard jumped out of the SUV, his face tight with panic and authority. "Stay back," he shouted. "Everyone move away." People hesitated, but only slightly. They circled closer, hunger for spectacle outweighing caution. Amara knelt beside the man. "Sir," she said softly, touching his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" No response. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck, just as her mother had once taught her when a neighbor collapsed years ago. A pulse, weak but there. "Help," she called out. "He needs help." The guard grabbed her arm. "Get away from him," he barked. "You don't belong here." "He's bleeding," Amara said, pulling free. "He needs pressure." She tore her scarf from her neck and pressed it against the wound, ignoring the warmth soaking through almost immediately. Another guard approached, eyes scanning the crowd. "Who are you?" he demanded. "She's the vendor," someone said dismissively. Her cart got hit. The words stung, but Amara kept her focus. The man's breathing hitched his face pale beneath the grime of the road. "Ambulance," she shouted again. "Please." One of the guards spoke urgently into a phone, his voice low and tense. "Sir, stay with me," he said to the injured man, kneeling now as well. Amara felt a flicker of relief. Help was coming. Then a hand shoved her shoulder. "Move," another guard snapped. "You're interfering." "I'm not," she said, holding her ground. "I'm helping." "You're a problem," he replied coldly. "If anything happens to him, it's on you." Around them murmurs spread. She caused this. "These people don't know their place. Why is she touching him?" Amara's chest tightened, but she didn't let go. She leaned closer to the man, shielding him as best she could from the chaos. For a moment, his eyelids fluttered. "Sir," she whispered urgently, "please, stay awake." His eyes opened slightly, unfocused. He stared at her as if trying to place her face in a world that no longer made sense. His lips moved. Amara leaned in, heart pounding. "Pass," he murmured, breath ragged. "Pascal." The name meant nothing to her, but the sound of it sent a ripple through the guards. One of them stiffened. What did he say? Before she could answer, the man's eyes rolled back. His body went slack. "Clear the way," a voice shouted. An ambulance finally pushed through the crowd siren, wailing, too late to erase what had already happened. Paramedics rushed forward, efficient and brisk. They took over, lifting the man onto a stretcher, hooking him to machines that beeped with urgent rhythm. Amara stepped back, her hands shaking, scarf soaked dark red. A guard blocked her path. "You," he said sharply. "You're coming with us." "With you?" she asked, stunned. "Why you were involved," he replied. "You touched him. You caused a disturbance." "I saved him," she said quietly. He laughed, once short and humorless. "That's not for you to decide." As the ambulance doors slammed shut and sped away, Amara stood frozen beside the wreckage of her cot. Smoke curled upward from the spilled oil. Her livelihood lay broken at her feet. People began to drift away, already bored, already searching for the next distraction. No one stayed with her. As the guards led her toward a waiting vehicle, Amara looked back at the empty space where the man had lain moments before. She felt a chill settle deep in her bones. She did not know who he was. She did not know why his name carried weight. She only knew that the moment she knelt beside him, her life had quietly, violently changed. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear. Amara sat on a hard plastic chair near the emergency ward, her back straight, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her scarf, once bright and clean, was now sealed inside a clear evidence bag stained dark with blood that was not hers. Every few seconds a nurse hurried past without looking at her. Machines beeped behind closed doors. Somewhere down the corridor someone cried. She had been there for hours. A uniformed officer stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching her as if she might run. Another flipped through a small notebook, occasionally glancing up with thinly veiled irritation. "State your name again," the officer with the notebook said. "Amara Iroka," she replied calmly. "I sell food near the bus stop on Ajayi Street." "You admit you were there," he said. "Yes, my cart was hit. And you touched the victim." "He was bleeding," Amara said. "No one else helped." The officer scribbled something. "You understand that interfering at an accident scene can be considered obstruction." She met his eyes. "I understand that leaving someone to die is wrong." His jaw tightened. Before he could respond, a tall man in a tailored traditional jacket entered the corridor. His presence shifted the air immediately. Conversations hushed. Nurses straightened. The officers snapped to attention. "Chief Adewale Ajayi." Amara recognized him from the market, from whispered warnings passed between vendors. He walked with practiced authority, his expression composed, his eyes sharp and assessing. "What's the delay?" he asked. The officer gestured toward Amara. "This is the vendor involved in the incident, sir." Ajayi studied her as if she were an object left in the wrong place. "You caused quite a scene," he said mildly. "My cart was destroyed," Amara replied, "and a man was dying." Ajayi's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "A very important man," he corrected. "One whose life does not belong in the hands of street vendors." The words landed like a slap. "I didn't know who he was," Amara said. "I only knew he needed help." Ajayi stepped closer. "Ignorance does not excuse responsibility." She felt a tightness in her chest but refused to look away. "I did nothing wrong." He regarded her for a long moment, then turned to the officers. "What happened to her cart?" "It was damaged in the accident, sir," one replied. "We had it removed from the scene." Ajayi nodded. "Good. That area has been a problem. Too many unlicensed operations." Amara's heart skipped. "Sir, I have a license," she said quickly. "I can show later," Ajayi said dismissively. "For now she will remain here until we complete our report." "With respect," the officer said hesitantly, "the victim is still in surgery." Ajayi's gaze hardened. "Exactly. Until we know the outcome, no one leaves." Hours passed. Amara's stomach growled, but she ignored it. Her thoughts returned again and again to Chinedu. He would be home by now. He would be waiting. She imagined him pacing the small room, peering out the window, wondering why she hadn't returned. She asked to make a call. The officer shook his head. Late into the night, a doctor finally emerged. Dr. Sola Ogunle removed his gloves, exhaustion etched into his face. "The patient is alive," he announced, "but critical." Relief washed through Amara so suddenly her eyes burned. "Thank God," she whispered. Ajayi exhaled slowly. "When will he regain consciousness?" It's uncertain, the doctor replied. Head trauma, internal injuries. We've stabilized him, but the next 24 hours are crucial. Ajayi nodded, then turned back to Amara. You may go, he said coolly. For now, she echoed. You will receive a formal summons, he continued. We will need a full statement. There are questions about liability. Liability, Amara said. My cart was destroyed. I was hurt. Ajayi's eyes flicked briefly to her bruised side, then away. Accidents are complicated, he said, especially when people don't stay in their place. The officer handed her a folded document. Sign here. She hesitated, scanning the page. The language was dense, unfamiliar. Her name was spelled incorrectly. I don't understand this, she said. It's routine, the officer replied. Just acknowledge you were present. Amara thought of her mother's voice, warning her never to sign what she didn't understand. Slowly, she shook her head. I won't sign, she said. Not until I read it properly. The officer frowned. Ajayi raised an eyebrow, surprised. Very well, Ajayi said after a pause. Then we'll do this the long way. Amara left the hospital close to midnight. The streets were quieter now, but the city still breathed around her. She walked the long distance home, her body aching, her mind racing. When she opened the door, Chinedu sprang to his feet. Amara, he cried, rushing to her. Where were you? I was scared. She held him tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of soap and dust. I'm here, she said softly. I'm sorry. He looked at her face, then down at her clothes. What happened? Her throat tightened. There was an accident. She did not sleep that night. The next morning she returned to the street. The space where her cart had stood was empty. No pots, no burner, no sign that she had ever worked there. A vendor nearby shook his head sympathetically. They took everything he said. City truck came late. Said it was evidence of what Amara asked quietly. He shrugged. Who knows? She went to the municipal office, waiting for hours, only to be told she needed a receipt to file a claim. The receipt she had lost when her cart was destroyed. By afternoon, she held the official summons in her hands. It ordered her to appear in 2 days' time for questioning, related to the accident involving Pascal Iroegbu. The name made her pause. So that was who he was. Back at home, she sat on the floor beside Chinedu, staring at the paper. Fear pressed in from all sides. Without her cart, she had no income. Without income, there would be no food, no school fees, no rent. And now she was being called to answer for an accident she had not caused. Somewhere in the city, Pascal Iroegbu lay unconscious, surrounded by machines and guarded doors. He did not know her name. He did not know what was being done in his. Amara folded the summons carefully and placed it beneath her thin mattress. She lifted her chin, forcing herself to breathe. If this was a test, she would face it standing. Pascal Iroegbu surfaced from darkness in fragments. At first there was only pain, deep pulsing without shape. It throbbed behind his eyes, along his ribs, through his skull, as if his body were arguing with itself about whether to keep going. Then came sound, a distant rhythmic beeping, soft voices layered over one another. The smell of antiseptic filled his lungs. He tried to move. A sharp protest shot through his side, stealing his breath. His fingers twitched instead, brushing against something cool and smooth. Plastic. Tubes. Easy, a voice said nearby. Calm. Male. Don't try to move yet. Pascal opened his eyes. The ceiling above him was white, too bright. He blinked, squinting, trying to focus. The room slowly came into view. Machines, curtains, the edge of a hospital bed. Where am I? He asked, his voice hoarse, barely recognizable to himself. You're in the hospital, the voice replied. Dr. Sola Ogunle stepped into his line of sight. You were in an accident. You've been unconscious for almost 2 days. Memory stirred disjointed and sharp. Metal screaming, a violent jolt, heat, then nothing. Pascal closed his eyes briefly, steadying his breathing. My phone, he said. My driver. They're safe, the doctor assured him. Your driver had minor injuries. He's been asking about you. Pascal nodded faintly. The doctor checked his monitors, making notes. You're stable, he continued, but you're not out of danger yet. You'll need rest, no stress. The word almost made Pascal laugh. After the doctor left, silence settled in the room. Pascal stared at the ceiling, his mind sharpening as the fog lifted. With clarity came awareness, and with awareness a face. A young woman. Not a nurse, not a doctor. Her hands had been rough-stained with oil and spice. Her eyes had been steady, fierce, even as she pressed something against his wound. He remembered the smell of food, the noise of the street, the guards shouting, and her refusal to move. His lips parted. The girl, he murmured. The door opened. Kunle Adebayo entered, relief washing over his face when he saw Pascal awake. Sir. Thank God. Kunle pulled a chair close. You scared us, he said quietly. The whole board, the girl Pascal interrupted. The one at the accident. Kunle hesitated. The vendor, yes, Pascal said. What happened to her? Kunle shifted uncomfortably. She was taken in for questioning. The authorities said she interfered with the scene. Pascal frowned, a slow anger stirring beneath his fatigue. Interfered, that's what they said, Kunle replied carefully. Chief Adewale Ajayi is handling it. Pascal closed his eyes, jaw tightening. Ajayi's name carried a familiar weight, too much power, too little accountability. She saved my life, Pascal said. If anyone interfered, it was the people who stood around doing nothing. Kunle nodded. I agree, sir. But you know how these things go. Pascal opened his eyes again. Find out her name. Kunle blinked. Sir, her name, Pascal repeated. And where she is. Kunle stood. I'll look into it. After he left, Pascal lay back staring at the faint reflection of himself in the darkened screen of a monitor. He barely recognized the man looking back. Pale, vulnerable. Stripped of the armor he wore so easily in boardrooms. He thought of all the meetings he had canceled in his life without consequence. All the people he had dismissed with a wave of his hand. Power had insulated him from moments like this, from lying helpless on a road dependent on a stranger's courage. He hated that feeling. By evening, news began to trickle in. Nkiru Balogun stopped by, briefly offering updates about the company. The board was restless. Victor Mensah had already begun positioning himself, suggesting interim decisions for stability. Pascal listened without speaking. After she left, Kunle returned. Her name is Amara Iroka, he said. She sells food near Ajayi Street. Lives in a single room with her younger brother. Pascal absorbed the information slowly. Amara Iroka. The name settled somewhere deep, unfamiliar, yet oddly grounding. What's her situation now, he asked. Kunle hesitated. Not good. Her cart was seized as evidence. She's been summoned to give a statement. No income, no legal representation. Pascal's hand curled against the sheets. Did she ask for anything? No, Sir, Kunle said. From what I hear, she refused to sign a document she didn't understand. They didn't like that. A sharp exhale escaped Pascal. He could picture it easily. The pressure, the imbalance, the quiet threats dressed as procedure. Get me her file, he said, and speak to Dr. Ogunlai. I want clearance to see her. Kunle's eyes widened slightly. Sir, you're barely. I didn't ask for advice. Pascal said, his tone calm but final. The doctor protested, but Pascal insisted. By the next afternoon, Amara Iroka was escorted into his room. She entered hesitantly, her posture straight, but guarded. She wore the same simple dress from the day of the accident, now freshly washed but still faded. Her eyes moved briefly over the machines, the private room, the quiet luxury. Then they met his. For a moment, neither spoke. "You're awake," Amara said finally. "Yes," Pascal replied. His voice was steadier now. "Because of you." She shook her head. "I did what anyone should. Most people didn't," he said. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken weight. "They say you interfered," Pascal continued, "that you caused trouble." Amara's chin lifted slightly. "They say many things. Did you?" he asked, watching her closely. "No," she said simply. "I helped." Something in her tone, firm, unembellished, cut through him. "I want to make this right," Pascal said after a moment. "Your cart, the summons, all of it." Amara's eyes narrowed, not with hope but caution. "I don't want money," she said, "and I don't want favors." Pascal studied her. "Then what do you want?" "The truth," she replied. "And my life back." He nodded slowly. "I can't promise this will be easy," he said, "but I can promise you won't face it alone." She considered him, weighing his words against the world she knew too well. "We'll see," she said quietly. As she turned to leave, Pascal felt a strange certainty settle in his chest. This was not a transaction. It was the beginning of something neither of them could control. Amara did not expect the meeting to stay with her long after she left the hospital. She told herself it was just another confrontation with power, another room where people spoke softly and decided loudly while she stood on the wrong side of the door. Yet as she walked back through the crowded streets toward home, Pascal Irowegbu's words echoed in her mind. "You won't face it alone." She had heard promises before. They usually dissolved the moment paperwork appeared. That evening, she cooked the last of their rice, carefully measuring portions so there would be something left for the morning. Chinedu watched her with the quiet attentiveness of a child who had learned too early how fragile things were. "You met him?" he asked. "Yes," Amara said. "What was he like?" She paused. "Different." Chinedu frowned. "Different how?" "Like someone who isn't used to being helpless," she said after a moment, "but doesn't want to be cruel either." Chinedu nodded as if that made perfect sense. The next day, a black car waited outside their building. Amara froze when she saw it. The driver stepped out Kunle Adebayo and greeted her politely, almost respectfully. "Mr. Irowegbu has requested your presence," he said. "Only if you agree." She hesitated. The memory of uniforms and closed doors tightened her chest. "Where the company offices," Kunle replied. "Just to talk." She glanced at Chinedu. "I'll be back before dark," she promised. The headquarters of Pascal Irowegbu's company rose from the city like a declaration. Glass and steel guarded entrances, quiet confidence. Amara felt every eye on her as she stepped inside. Her simple dress, her worn sandals, her careful posture. She was led not to the boardroom, but to a smaller conference space. Pascal was already there, seated, his movements slower than before, a faint stiffness betraying his injuries. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I came to listen," Amara replied. "Not to agree." He accepted that with a nod. "I've reviewed the report," Pascal began. "The one they asked you to sign." Amara's hands clenched. "And it's incomplete," he said, "and misleading." Her eyes flicked up sharply. "It places responsibility on you by omission," Pascal continued. "It implies negligence without stating it outright." "So, they plan to blame me," she said quietly. "Yes," he said, "if you let them." Silence settled between them. "What do you want me to do?" Amara asked. "I want you to work with us," Pascal said. "Temporarily." Her brows drew together. "Work, not charity," he added quickly. "A contract, limited, paid. You'd assist with a community outreach, audit markets, street vendors, informal businesses. Amara laughed once sharp and disbelieving. You want me to walk into your world so people like Chief Ajayi can say I'm being bought? I want you inside the room, Pascal said evenly, so they can't silence you outside it. She studied him. And when they say, I don't belong there, they already say that, he replied. Amara stood. You don't understand, she said. In your world, humiliation is a strategy. In mine, it can end everything. Pascal rose slowly as well. Then don't do it for me, he said. Do it for your brother, for your cart, for every vendor who signs papers they can't read. The room felt suddenly smaller. I won't be your symbol, Amara said, and I won't be your shield. I don't need either, Pascal replied. I need the truth where it can't be buried. She turned away, heart pounding. I'll think about it, she said finally. 2 days later, the trap was set. Amara returned to the building to decline the offer. Instead, she was escorted to a reception area buzzing with quiet tension. Whispers followed her as she walked. Eyes lingered. A woman in a tailored dress approached her, smile sharp. You must be the vendor, she said lightly. We've heard so much. Before Amara could respond, a security officer stepped forward. Ma'am, he said we need to ask you a few questions. About what Amara asked. There's been a report, he said. A missing document from this floor. The room went silent. The accusation landed like a stone in her stomach. I haven't taken anything, she said. The woman's smile widened. Then you won't mind if we check your bag. Hands trembled as Amara opened it. Inside lay her notebook, a pen, and a folded company envelope she had never seen before. Gasps rippled through the room. That's not mine, Amara said, her voice steady despite the roaring in her ears. Someone put that there. Security exchanged looks. Phones came out. The story wrote itself. When Pascal arrived minutes later, the damage was already spreading. She was caught, someone whispered. Stealing. Pascal's gaze locked on Amara's face. He saw anger there, yes, but also something else. Betrayal, the quiet kind. Leave us, he said sharply. When the room cleared, Amara turned on him. So this is how it works, she said. You invite me in so I can be destroyed properly. Pascal shook his head. This wasn't my doing. Then it's your world, she replied. And it's done enough. She walked out before he could stop her. That night, Amara packed what little they had. We're leaving, she told Chinedu, where he asked. I don't know, she said, but not here. She stepped outside to get air and froze. Across the street, an elderly woman struggled with a heavy bag. No one helped. Cars passed. People looked away. Amara hesitated, exhaustion screaming at her to keep walking. Then she crossed the street and lifted the bag, without a word. Thank you, the woman said. Eyes wet. From a car parked nearby, Pascal watched. He saw the way Amara bent under the weight without complaint. The way she smiled gently, despite everything. Something inside him broke open. By morning, the missing document was traced to Victor Mensa's office. The setup unraveled quickly once Pascal applied pressure where it mattered. But when he went to find Amara, her room was empty. Only a note remained written in careful handwriting. I won't fight your battles for you, but I won't let you decide my worth either. Pascal folded the note slowly. For the first time since the accident, he was certain of one thing. If justice was going to mean anything, it would have to start with earning back the trust of the woman who had knelt beside him when no one else did. Amara resurfaced at dawn in a part of the city that never fully slept. The transport hub near the old railway lines was already awake, hawkers calling out prices. Buses, coughing smoke bodies brushing past one another with practiced indifference. She rented a narrow space beside a concrete pillar and spread a clean cloth on the ground. With borrowed money and borrowed courage, She set out what she could sell: boiled eggs, ground nuts, a pot of thin porridge that warmed hands more than it filled stomachs. It wasn't a cart. It wasn't secure. But it was honest. Chinedu sat nearby with his school bag at his feet, reading aloud from a dog-eared book. Amara listened while counting coins, letting his voice steady her. She told herself the city had many faces. If one had turned its back on her, another would eventually look her way. Across town, Pascal Iroegbu arrived early at headquarters. The building felt colder than usual, its glass walls reflecting a man he no longer recognized. Tired eyes, jaw-clenched anger simmering under control. He walked past greetings without answering, straight into Victor Mensa's office. "Close the door," Pascal said. Victor complied, masking irritation with a professional smile. "I heard there was some confusion yesterday." "Confusion doesn't plant evidence," Pascal replied. He placed the retrieved envelope on Victor's desk. "Explain this." Victor glanced at it, then back up. "I have no idea how that ended up there." "You have an excellent idea," Pascal said quietly. "And so do I." Silence stretched. "You're overreacting," Victor said finally. "This woman, she's unstable, emotional. She doesn't belong here." "That's not your decision," Pascal said. "And it's not mine either." Victor leaned back. "Careful," he warned. "You're letting sentiment cloud judgment. The board is watching. Let them," Pascal replied. "So am I." By mid-morning, Pascal convened a closed meeting. Nkiru Balogun took notes, her face composed but alert. The agenda was short and precise: internal ethics review evidence, handling protocols, disciplinary proceedings. Victor objected loudly. Pascal overruled him calmly. Outside the boardroom, whispers grew teeth. "Did you hear the CEO is protecting the vendor? She stole company property. Or maybe she knows something." Pascal knew the machine would keep grinding. The only way to stop it was to change what it produced. He left the building without an escort and drove himself to the transport hub. Amara saw him before she believed it. He stood a few paces away, suit crisp against the grime of the platform, hands empty posture. Careful. People stared. A man like that did not belong here. "You shouldn't be here," she said, standing to face him. "I know," Pascal replied. "That's why I came." She folded her arms. "To apologize, to listen," he said, "and to tell you the truth." She studied him, weighing each breath. "Talk." "I traced the setup," Pascal said. "It came from Victor Mensa's floor. He wanted you discredited. And you," Amara asked. "What did you want?" "I wanted the truth to survive," he said. "I failed to protect you from the cost." A vendor nearby scoffed. Someone laughed. Amara felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "You don't get to fail once and call it learning," she said. "Where I come from, failure is permanent." "I know," Pascal said. "That's why I'm here without guards, without papers." She shook her head. "Words don't rebuild carts. I've authorized restitution through the city," he said. "Public, transparent. Not from me through the process they denied you." Her eyes narrowed. "And the summons withdrawn," he said. "Replaced with a witness statement if you choose." The choice hung between them, fragile and sharp. "I won't be paraded," Amara said. "I won't be used to polish your reputation." "I won't ask you to be," Pascal replied. "Only to tell what you saw." She looked at Chinedu, then back at Pascal. "I saw fear," she said. "And speed, and a driver who tried to correct too late." Pascal nodded. "That's enough for now." He turned to leave, then stopped. "If you decide to walk away, I'll still do what's right." Amara watched him go, unsure whether to believe that anyone with that much power could mean it. The city tested her belief that very night. Two men approached her stall as dusk fell. They smiled without warmth. "You're drawing attention," one said. "That's dangerous. I sell food," Amara replied. That's all. The other leaned closer. Some people don't like noise. Chinedu stiffened. Amara placed herself between him and the men. Leave, she said. They did slowly, promisingly. Fear crept in after they were gone, cold and persistent. Amara packed up early, her hands shaking. By morning, Pascal had doubled security at the hub, not with uniforms but with light. Temporary stalls, city permits posted, clearly a small team from the municipal office, documenting conditions in daylight. It wasn't protection by force. It was visibility. Victor noticed immediately. This is turning into a spectacle, he snapped during a follow-up meeting. Good, Pascal replied. Spectacles are harder to bury. Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're creating enemies. I already have them, Pascal said. I just stopped pretending otherwise. At the hub, Amara felt the shift before she understood it. Officers asked questions politely. Vendors were heard. Receipts were issued. It wasn't justice, not yet, but it was movement. A woman she barely knew pressed a mango into her hand. You stood, she said, so we can stand too. That afternoon, Amara received a call from Nkiru Balogun. If you're willing. Nkiru said there's a session tomorrow. Closed. You'd speak. We'd listen. Amara closed her eyes. And after Nkiru replied, things will change. Not all at once, but enough. Night fell with a strange quiet. Amara sat beside Chinedu, watching buses come and go. She thought of the room where men decided outcomes. She thought of the street where outcomes were lived. She picked up her phone and typed a message she wasn't sure she should send. I'll speak, once, on my terms. Pascal read it minutes later. He didn't smile. He simply breathed. Because the world they were stepping into next would not forgive hesitation. The room was smaller than Amara expected. No cameras, no long table. Just a circle of chairs, a whiteboard, and a single window that looked out over the city without pretending to own it. Nkiru Balogun stood near the window, hands folded, expression neutral. Two compliance officers sat opposite her. Pascal Iroegbu took a seat that was not at the center. Amara noticed that immediately. Thank you for coming, Nkiru said. This session is off the record. You can leave at any time. Amara nodded once. She sat with her back straight, hands resting on her knees. She had chosen her words carefully on the walk over. She would not beg. She would not perform. Tell us what you remember, one of the officers said. Amara closed her eyes briefly. The street returned to her in fragments, the angle of the SUV, the sudden swerve, the motorcycle cutting too close. The driver's hands turning the wheel too hard. She described the sounds first, then the movement, then the moment she saw Pascal on the ground. I didn't see someone push the vehicle, she said, but I saw speed that didn't match the road, and I saw a phone in the driver's hand, just before impact. The room stilled. Are you certain? The officer asked. I'm certain of what I saw, Amara replied. I won't guess beyond that. Pascal leaned forward slightly. The driver admitted to taking a call, he said quietly. He claimed it came from a blocked number. Nkiru's pen paused. Blocked numbers can be traced, she said. Yes, Pascal agreed, if someone wants them traced. The meeting ended without applause or promises. Nkiru thanked Amara again. Pascal walked her to the elevator, keeping a respectful distance. You were clear, he said. That matters. It will matter if you let it. Amara replied. The doors closed between them. Within hours, the pressure returned, subtle at first, then unmistakable. A rumor spread online, thinly sourced and thickly shared. Street vendor manipulates CEO after accident. A grainy photo of Amara, helping the elderly woman from days before, was twisted into a caption about playing the poor card. Someone posted her address. Someone else suggested she was paid. Amara read the comments with a steady hand until the words blurred. She turned off her phone and focused on Chinedu's homework, listening to him sound out sentences as if the world were still simple enough to be decoded. That night, a knock came at the door. 2 officers stood in the hallway, polite smiles practiced and empty. "We need to ask you a few questions," one said. Again, Amara asked. "New information," the other replied. She asked for a warrant. They did not have one. "Then come back with it," she said, and closed the door gently but firmly. The smile vanished. The next morning, the transport hub was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Vendors whispered. A stall, 2 spaces down, had been dismantled overnight. No notice, no explanation. Amara felt the familiar knot tighten in her chest. At headquarters, Victor Mensah watched the city through a glass wall and smiled thinly. "She's resilient," he said to no one in particular. Resilience cracks. By afternoon, a courier delivered a letter to Amara's door. Official seal, heavy paper. It summoned her to provide a supplementary statement, this time at the municipal office, under Chief Adewale Ajayi's authority. Pascal read the copy and Kiru forwarded him, and felt something cold settle behind his eyes. "Ajayi is escalating," Nkiru said. "He wants her isolated. Then we keep her in daylight," Pascal replied. "Public counsel, witness support." Victor interjected. "You're inflaming this. The board." "The board can wait," Pascal said. "A woman's life cannot." Victor's gaze sharpened. "Careful, Pascal. You're tying your credibility to hers." "I already did," Pascal answered, "when I chose truth." The municipal office smelled like old paper and impatience. Amara arrived with a volunteer legal advocate, Nkiru had arranged, young, determined, underfunded. Chief Ajayi greeted them with a genial nod that never reached his eyes. "Ms. Iroka," he said, "we appreciate your cooperation." "I appreciate clarity," Amara replied. The questions were not about facts, they were about character. Why was she near the road? Why didn't she move sooner? Why did she touch the victim? Why refuse to sign? Why speak now? Amara answered without raising her voice. "I was there because I work there. I moved when I could. I touched him to stop the bleeding. I refused to sign because I didn't understand. I speak now because you asked." Ajayi smiled. "You're very composed." "I had practice," she said. Outside, a crowd gathered, some curious, some hostile. A man shouted that she was lying. A woman shouted back that she was brave. The noise pressed in as Amara stepped out into the sun. Then everything tipped. A hand grabbed her bag. She stumbled. The world narrowed to motion and breath. By the time Pascal arrived, alerted by Nkiru, Amara was gone. The street seethed with confusion. A vendor pointed down an alley. Someone else said a van. No plates. Pascal felt the old instinct rise, the one that reached for control at any cost. He crushed it. "Call the police," someone urged. "They're already involved," Pascal said. "Call the independent unit." He dialed himself, voice steady, words precise. He authorized searches, requested footage, opened accounts without blinking. An hour later, a message arrived from an unknown number. "Stop pushing, or she disappears." Pascal forwarded it immediately. "They want leverage," he said to Nkiru. "We give them none." In a dim room that smelled of damp concrete, Amara sat with her hands bound loosely, not tight enough to injure, tight enough to warn. A man stood in the doorway, bored more than angry. "You talk too much," he said. "I answer questions," Amara replied. He shrugged. "People don't like answers." She thought of Chinedu, of the stall dismantled in the night, of Pascal's promise not to decide her worth. Fear pressed in, heavy and real. She breathed through it. "I won't sign anything," she said. "I won't say what you want." The man sighed. "You're making this difficult." "Truth often is," she replied. Outside, sirens wailed closer than the man expected. Footsteps, shouts, light. By the time the door burst open, Amara's wrists were already free. She stood on her own, blinking against the sudden brightness. Pascal was not the first through the door. He had insisted on that. The law entered before him. When it was over, when statements were taken and the room emptied, Pascal stood a few steps away, hands at his sides as if any movement might break the fragile quiet. "I'm here," he said. "I know," Amara replied. Her voice shook once, then steadied. "But don't ever let it come to this again." He nodded. "It won't." That night the city buzzed with a new rumor, this one harder to twist. Someone had tried to silence a witness. Someone had failed. Victor read the headlines and closed his laptop slowly. Ajayi stared at his phone, jaw tight. Amara sat beside Chinedu, listening to him breathe, and felt the first small shift inside her. Not relief, not victory, but resolve. If they wanted her quiet, she would speak. If they wanted her small, she would stand. Because the cost of silence had already been paid. Amara did not sleep the night after she was released. Even with the door locked and Chinedu breathing steadily beside her, her body refused rest. Every small sound, the scrape of a tire, a raised voice in the distance, pulled her upright heart racing. She reminded herself where she was, what had happened, what had ended. Then she reminded herself of what had not. In the early hours she made tea and sat by the window. The city glowed faintly, a scatter of lights stitched together by roads that never truly went quiet. She thought of the dim room where she had been held, of the man who had looked bored, as if fear were a routine task. She thought of the moment the door burst open, and the law not power had entered first. That mattered. By mid-morning, messages arrived. Vendors at the hub checked in, cautious but supportive. A woman Amara barely knew sent a single line, "We saw. We believe you." Amara read it twice, then put her phone down and focused on Chinedu's breakfast. At headquarters, Pascal moved through meetings with a different cadence. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his words were measured, precise. Victor Mensa watched him closely, irritation masked by civility. "You're creating expectations," Victor said after a meeting broke. "People will think you owe them." Pascal didn't look at him. People always think that he replied. The difference now is whether we answer. Nkiru Balogun joined Pascal in his office later that afternoon. "The independent unit confirmed the van," she said. "Unregistered. The trail isn't clean, but it's not invisible either." "And Ajayi?" Pascal asked. "Quiet," Nkiru replied. "Too quiet." Pascal nodded. Quiet meant waiting. Waiting meant pressure building somewhere else. That evening, Pascal went to the transport hub alone. Amara saw him approach and felt a ripple of surprise, then caution. She did not stand immediately. She finished counting coins, wiped her hands, and faced him. "You shouldn't be here," she said, echoing her earlier words. "I know," Pascal replied. "I wanted to ask how you are." She considered him. "I'm standing," she said. "That's enough for today." He accepted that. "I won't stay long." They stood side by side, without touching, watching buses come and go. The hub hummed with ordinary life arguments over fares, laughter, the scrape of metal against concrete. "I keep thinking about what you said," Pascal began. "About not letting anyone decide your worth." Amara nodded. "It's the only way to survive." "I've spent years deciding value," Pascal said quietly. "Companies, contracts, people. I told myself it was neutral, efficient." And now she asked. "And now I'm learning it's never neutral," he said. "It just hides its cost." Amara glanced at him. "Learning doesn't erase harm." "I know," Pascal replied. "That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness." They fell silent again. The space between them felt different now, less charged, more careful. "I won't be your shield," Amara said after a moment. "Or your story. I won't ask you to be, Pascal said, but I won't step away either. She searched his face for the usual signs: impatience, entitlement, the need to control the outcome. She saw none of them. What she saw instead unsettled her more restraint. Walk with me, she said finally. Just once. They moved through the hub together, slowly greeting people who stared and whispered. A woman pressed a cup of porridge into Amara's hands and nodded at Pascal without smiling. A man shook Pascal's hand, too firmly, testing something. When they reached the edge of the platform, Amara stopped. This is where it ends for today, she said. Thank you, Pascal replied. As he turned to leave, Amara spoke again. You said you wouldn't decide my worth. I meant it, he said. Then don't decide my feelings either, she said. They're not ready. He inclined his head. Understood. That night a different fear crept in, quieter, more personal. Amara found herself thinking of Pascal not as a symbol of danger or protection, but as a man who listened. The thought unsettled her. It felt like stepping onto thin ice after surviving a storm. She pushed it aside. Across town, Victor met with Chief Adewale Ajayi in a private dining room where no phones were allowed. The meal went untouched. You overplayed your hand, Victor said. Ajayi's expression hardened. I protected the city. You protected yourself, Victor snapped. Now you've brought scrutiny. Ajayi leaned back. And you've brought sentiment into a boardroom. We're both exposed. Victor's smile returned tight and sharp. Then we cut the thread where it's weakest. The next morning, the weakest thread was Chinedu's school. Amara received a call as she set up her stall. Ms. Iroka, the administrator, said, voice rehearsed. There's an issue with your brother's fees. Until it's resolved, he cannot attend. I paid last month, Amara said. There's a discrepancy, the woman replied. You'll need to come in. Amara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She closed her eyes, breathing through the panic. I'll be there, she said. Pascal found out an hour later through Nkiru, who had a talent for hearing what others missed. They're squeezing her, Nkiru said. Indirectly, Pascal's jaw set. We don't counter pressure, he said. We fix the process. He made calls, not to donors, to auditors. By afternoon, the school's records were corrected. Apologies were issued. Chinedu returned to class the next day, confused but relieved. Amara did not thank Pascal. She didn't have to. Instead, she showed up to the next session with the independent unit and spoke clearly, carefully, without embellishment. She named what she saw. She named what happened after. She refused to speculate. The record grew heavier. That evening, Pascal received a call from Victor. You're dragging the company into this, Victor said. The board is split. Then let them split, Pascal replied. Truth isn't compromised by division. You're choosing her, Victor said softly. Pascal paused. I'm choosing accountability. When he ended the call, he stared out at the city and admitted something he hadn't yet said aloud. He was choosing Amara, too. Not as a rescue, not as a conquest, as a person whose courage had cracked open a life built on distance. Amara sat with Chinedu that night, listening to him recite lines he had memorized for school. She corrected him, gently smiled when he got it right, and felt the world steady beneath her again. She thought of Pascal's restraint, of his refusal to decide what wasn't his. It scared her, because trust, she knew, did not arrive with grand gestures. It arrived quietly, like a door left unlocked on purpose. And, once opened, it changed the shape of everything. The truth did not arrive all at once. It surfaced in pieces, quiet, stubborn fragments that refused to disappear. Pascal Iroegbu sat alone in his office, long after the building had emptied. The city glimmered beyond the glass, indifferent to the slow work of consequence. On his desk lay 3 folders: the accident report, the independent unit's preliminary findings, and a thin file Nkiru Balogun had labeled simply Driver Communications. He opened the last one again. Timestamps, call durations, a blocked number that appeared once then vanished. The driver's statement, carefully worded professionally. Vague, sat beside a technical note, explaining how blocked calls could be masked through a private exchange. Pascal exhaled slowly. "Show me who benefits," he murmured. The answer was not hidden. It had been standing in meetings arguing about interim leadership, urging stability through control. Victor Mensa had moved too quickly after the accident, too confidently, like someone who knew the ground would shift and had already chosen where to stand. Pascal closed the folder and called Nkiru. "I want a full audit of executive communications," he said. "Off the books. Start with Victor's office. That will make noise," Nkiru replied. "Good," Pascal said. "Noise attracts witnesses." At the transport hub, Amara felt the hum of attention sharpen again. A stranger asked too many questions about her schedule. Another lingered near Chinedu, longer than necessary. Nothing overt, nothing provable. But fear learned its own language, and Amara understood it fluently. She packed up earlier than usual and walked Chinedu home by a different route. At their door, she paused, listening. "Why are we walking so fast?" Chinedu asked. "Because we're late," Amara said, forcing a smile. That night she wrote everything she remembered in a notebook. Times, faces, words that had felt wrong, even before they made sense. She wrote about the phone in the driver's hand, about the men who warned her to be quiet, about the van. She wrote until her hand cramped. Across town, Victor met with a fixer whose name never appeared on documents. The man spoke softly, confidently, like someone who understood risk as a budget line. "She's still talking," Victor said. "For now," the fixer replied. "Talking gets expensive." "Make it stop," Victor said, cleanly. The fixer tilted his head. Clean is relative. The next morning, the independent unit requested a formal deposition from Amara Public Counsel. Present, recorded, scheduled. Visibility again. Amara agreed. Pascal insisted on attending, not in the room, but in the building. "She won't be alone," he told Nkiru. "She's not a child," Nkiru replied. "No," Pascal said. "She's a witness." The deposition went smoothly. Amara answered questions with precision, correcting the record when language slipped into implication. Her advocate nodded, often impressed. When it ended, a clerk approached with a form. "Just a signature," he said. Amara scanned it carefully. The language was new, different. She looked up. This wasn't discussed. The clerk shrugged. "Standard addendum." Amara pushed it back. "Bring counsel." The clerk frowned. "It's just procedure." "So was the last paper you tried to make me sign," Amara replied. "I won't repeat myself." The clerk left, irritation trailing behind him. Outside, Pascal watched through a glass corridor as Amara exited the room, shoulders squared. He felt a quiet pride he didn't name. Then his phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "You're missing the pattern. Look closer at the driver's route." Pascal stopped walking. He pulled the GPS data. The driver's route that day deviated twice, small deliberate detours that shaved minutes off the journey. Detours that required instructions. Pascal forwarded the data to Nkiru. "Find who benefits from arriving early," he said. At the hub that evening, a commotion broke out near Amara's stall. A man accused her of overcharging. Voices rose. A small crowd formed. Amara de-escalated calmly, refunding the coin. The man left dissatisfied. Then another stepped forward, filming. "Say it again," he urged. "Say you didn't steal." Amara's chest tightened. She closed her stall without a word and took Chinedu's hand. From across the street, Pascal watched and did nothing. It was the hardest choice he'd made in weeks. He knew that if he intervened publicly now, the narrative would twist again, protector puppet performance. He waited instead for the lever that mattered. It came at midnight. Nkiru called. "We have confirmation," she said. Victor's office placed the call, not directly through a private exchange. The fixer's name surfaced. Pascal closed his eyes. "Prepare the evidence," he said, "and secure the driver." "The driver's gone," Nkiru replied. "Left the city an hour ago." A cold calm settled over Pascal. "Then we go forward without him." At dawn, Amara woke to a sound she had learned to dread. A knock. She opened the door cautiously. Two men stood there, polite, well-dressed, unfamiliar. "We'd like to help you," one said. "Relocate. For your safety." Amara's pulse quickened. "Who sent you?" "A friend," the man replied. "Someone who wants this to end." She shook her head. "It ends in daylight." The men exchanged a glance. "You're making a mistake." "So are you," Amara said, and closed the door. Minutes later, the power cut. The room plunged into dim gray light. Chinedu gasped. Amara grabbed her phone. No signal. A crash echoed from the stairwell. She pushed Chinedu into the bathroom and locked the door from the outside. "Don't open," she whispered. "No matter what." Her heart hammered as footsteps approached. Then sirens. Not closing. A voice shouted. Another answered. By the time the door burst open, it was not the men who stood there, but officers from the independent unit warrants raised cameras rolling. Amara sank to the floor, shaking. Pascal arrived moments later and stopped short when he saw her small, fierce, unbroken. He did not touch her. "I'm sorry," he said. She looked up at him. "Don't be," she replied. "Be finished." He nodded. That afternoon, Pascal convened an emergency board meeting. The evidence was presented without drama, timestamps, call logs, payments, a pattern of pressure that pointed unambiguously to Victor Mensah and Chief Adewale Ajayi's office. Victor denied, blustered, threatened. Then the independent unit entered the room. The silence that followed was not relief. It was reckoning. By evening, headlines shifted tone. Attempted witness intimidation. Executive communications under review. Municipal oversight investigated. Amara watched the news with Chinedu, asleep beside her. She felt no triumph, only a deep, steady resolve. The truth was no longer hidden, but it was not yet whole. Because justice, she knew, was not the fall of a single man. It was what came after. The city woke to sirens and speculation. By morning, Victor Mensah's name was everywhere on radio talk shows, across scrolling headlines whispered in taxis and market stalls. Some called it a witch hunt. Others called it overdue. The truth, as always, sat uneasily between power and proof. Amara did not celebrate. She walked Chinedu to school as usual, holding his hand a little tighter than before. Parents glanced at her with curiosity, recognition flickering in their eyes. A few nodded. One woman squeezed her arm gently and said, "Be strong." Amara smiled, but her chest felt hollow. Strength had kept her standing. It had not made her safe. At headquarters, Pascal moved through a building that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Security tightened. Doors closed softly behind him. Conversation stopped when he entered rooms. The board convened in fragments. Emergency calls, legal briefings, risk assessments layered over one another like noise. Victor had been suspended pending investigation. Chief Adewale Ajayi was on leave. The driver remained missing. Without the driver, one board member said this becomes circumstantial. "Circumstances add up," Pascal replied evenly. "They also get buried," another countered. Pascal said nothing. He had learned that silence could be a tool, but only when paired with action. By midday, the independent unit requested Amara's presence again. This time not to testify, but to review security footage pulled from the municipal grid. The footage was grainy, partial, frustrating. It showed a van entering and leaving an alley. It showed two men waiting. It showed nothing definitive. "We need the driver," the lead investigator said. "Or someone who can place intent." Amara listened, her hands folded. Intent was everywhere, she said. It just didn't wear a name. That afternoon, a message arrived on Pascal's phone from an unknown number. "You won't find him. He's already paid." Pascal forwarded it immediately. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He waited. Waiting gave people room to move and to make mistakes. At dusk, Amara returned home to find the door ajar. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She stepped inside, slowly, senses sharpened. Nothing appeared disturbed. Chinedu's room was empty, his shoes gone, his bag missing. "Chinedu," she called, her voice breaking. No answer. Panic surged. She ran down the stairs out into the street, calling his name. Neighbors emerged alarmed. "He left with a woman," someone said hesitantly. "She said she was sent by the school." Amara's knees buckled. She called the school. No one had sent anyone. She called Pascal. "I'm coming," he said immediately. By the time Pascal arrived, Amara was barely holding herself together. Fear stripped away restraint, leaving only raw terror. "They took him," she said, words tumbling. "They took my brother." Pascal felt the familiar instinct roar control force consequence. He pressed it down. "We will find him," he said. "But we do this right." She rounded on him. "Right!" she cried. "My child is gone." He took the words as they were meant. "I know," he said softly. "And I won't let this end in silence." An hour later the call came. A blocked number. Pascal put it on speaker. "You should have stopped," a man said. "Now choose, where is he?" Amara demanded, voice shaking. "Safe," the man replied. "For now. Withdraw your statement. Tonight." Pascal closed his eyes briefly. "This call is being recorded," he said calmly. The man laughed. "Record this," he said. "Deadlines don't negotiate." The call ended. Amara collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Pascal knelt in front of her, careful not to touch without permission. "We won't comply," he said gently. "Because compliance won't save him. It will only teach them this works." She looked at him through tears. "Then what do? We wait," Pascal said. "And we watch." He contacted the independent unit, bypassing local channels entirely. Warrants expanded. Border alerts triggered. Phone triangulation began, not on the caller but on the pattern of past intimidation. People who believed themselves invisible often reused shadows. At midnight, a lead surfaced, a safe house registered under a shell company tied to the fixer Victor had hired. The property lay outside the city, quiet, overlooked. "Go," Amara said. "Please." "You don't come," Pascal replied. "You wait." "I'm going," she said. "He's my brother." Pascal met her gaze. "And you're my responsibility." She flinched. "I'm not." "I know," he said quickly. "I mean because I asked you to speak. Because I promised daylight." She searched his face, then nodded once. "Then bring him home." The operation moved fast. Independent officers entered the property before dawn. There was no gunfight, no dramatic chase. Just doors forced open, hands raised, confusion, giving way to compliance. Chinedu was found in a back room, asleep on a mattress, clutching his school book. When Amara saw him, she broke. She held him as if letting go might undo the world. He clung to her, crying into her shoulder, asking if he had done something wrong. "No," she whispered, fiercely. "Never." Outside, the fixer was taken into custody. His phone was seized, messages recovered, payments traced. The driver's location surfaced hours later. Another city, another mistake. By morning, the story shifted again. Witness intimidation escalates. Child abduction, linked to corporate sabotage, arrests made. Pascal stood before cameras that afternoon, not as a savior, but as a man answering questions. "I failed to see how power was being used in my name," he said. "I won't fail again." Amara watched from home, Chinedu, asleep beside her. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion and a fragile, growing certainty. They had crossed a line. that could not be uncrossed. Victor Mensah was arrested that evening. Chief Adewale Ajayi followed hours later. In the quiet that came after Pascal sat alone in his office, lights-off city reflected in the glass. He thought of the road, the cot, the scarf pressed against a wound. He thought of how close they had come to losing everything, and he understood finally the cost of choosing justice late. Amara sat by the window that night, listening to the city breathe. Chinedu slept peacefully for the first time in days. Her phone buzzed with a message from Pascal. "He's safe. I'm here when you're ready." She did not reply. Not yet. Because trust once broken by the world did not rush back. It arrived slowly, if it arrived at all. Morning arrived without permission. Amara woke to the sound of Chinedu, breathing evenly beside her, the steady rise and fall of his chest anchoring her to the present. For a few seconds the world felt normal, small, quiet, survivable. Then memory returned sharp and insistent. The knock, the lie, the hours of not knowing. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake him, and let the weight of it settle. Fear had not vanished. It had simply learned new edges. At headquarters, Pascal faced a building that no longer pretended calm. Investigators moved through corridors with badges visible and voices low. Boxes left Victor Mensah's office sealed and catalogued. Phones rang unanswered. The board assembled not to debate strategy, but to react. "This is a crisis," one member said. "Public confidence will not be restored by silence," Pascal interrupted. "Or by distance." Another member leaned forward. "You should step aside," he said gently. "Let counsel handle it." Pascal shook his head. "Counsel will handle the law. I will handle the truth." The independent unit requested a public session controlled, structured, transparent. Not a spectacle, a record. Nkiru Balogun briefed Pascal quietly. "They want Amara present," she said. "Not as a victim, as a witness." Pascal exhaled. "I won't ask her." "I know," Nkiru replied, "but she may choose." Amara chose after lunch. She took Chinedu to school herself and waited until the gate closed behind him. Then she walked no driver, no escort to the legal center where the session would be held. Her advocate met her at the door, concern etched into her face. "You don't have to do this," the advocate said. "I know," Amara replied. "That's why I will." The room was larger this time. Cameras were present, positioned carefully, labeled clearly. Representatives from civil oversight sat in the front row. The independent unit stood to one side, neutral by design. Pascal entered last and took a seat away from the microphones. Amara noticed and nodded once. When it was her turn, she spoke without raising her voice. She told the story as she had lived it. The street, the cart, the bleeding man, the papers she refused to sign, the warnings, the van, the night her brother disappeared. She named actions, not emotions, facts, not fear. When the session ended, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then the chair thanked her. No applause followed. None was needed. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Amara did not stop. Pascal waited until the corridor emptied. "Thank you," he said. She met his eyes. "For what?" "For choosing daylight," he replied. "I didn't choose it for you," she said. "I chose it for my brother." He nodded. "As you should." That afternoon, prosecutors announced formal charges. Not all of them, not yet. The language was careful, provisional, constrained by process. Victor Mensah's counsel called it circumstantial. Chief Adewale Ajayi's team called it politically motivated. The fixer pleaded ignorance. The driver was still missing. That night, Amara slept in a place that was not her own. Pascal had arranged a safe apartment, temporary, quiet, anonymous. She accepted it without comment. Safety did not feel like a favor. It felt like air. Chinedu explored the rooms with cautious excitement. "It's only for a while, right?" he asked. "Yes," Amara said. "Only for a while." She tucked him in and sat alone by the window. The city spread beneath her, endless and indifferent. She thought of the long road back to ordinary life, work school. Small worries that didn't threaten to swallow everything. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. He's not gone. He's waiting. Amara stared at the screen. Heart thudding, she forwarded it to Nkiru without reply. At dawn, the call came. A location, a time, a voice that sounded tired. "You want the driver," the voice said. "Come alone." Pascal listened to the recording twice, then once more. "It's a trap," Nkiru said. "Yes," Pascal replied. "And it's an opportunity." He made the call he had been avoiding to the independent unit, to prosecutors, to a judge who understood urgency without spectacle. By noon, warrants were prepared. By evening, a plan was in place. Amara found Pascal waiting when she returned from school pickup. "They contacted me," she said. "I know," he replied. "You're not going." She considered him. "I didn't say I would." "Good," Pascal said, "because we won't meet them on their terms." The meeting happened anyway. At the edge of the city, in a warehouse district that smelled of dust and old oil, the fixer arrived, believing himself clever. He expected leverage. He did not expect patience. The driver was there, tired, shaking eyes darting like someone who had outrun himself for too long. When the independent unit entered, there was no chase. The driver raised his hands and began talking before anyone asked. He named the call, the payment, the pressure. He named Victor Mensa. He named Chief Adewale Ajayi's office. The record closed. By morning, arrests followed swiftly, not quietly, transparently. Amara watched the news with Chinedu at her side. She muted the sound when faces appeared, men she did not want him to memorize. "Is it over?" he asked. "It's ending," she replied. "That's different." Pascal stood before the board later that day and said the words he had prepared, carefully. "I will not negotiate accountability," he said. "Not for stability, not for profit." A vote followed. It was not unanimous. It didn't need to be. That evening, Pascal visited the safe apartment and stopped at the door. "I won't come in," he said. "I just wanted you to hear this from me." Amara folded her arms. "I'm listening." "They're charging him," Pascal said. "All of them." She closed her eyes, breath shuddering once. And after Pascal said, "You decide what comes next." She looked at him, then really looked. He seemed smaller, without the machinery of power behind him. More human. "I decide," she repeated. "Yes," he said. She nodded. "Then leave." He did. That night, Amara slept deeply for the first time since the accident. Not because the world was safe, but because for once it had listened. And listening, she knew, was where justice began. The city did not calm down after the arrests. It sharpened. For every person who celebrated the headlines, another questioned them. For every voice that called it justice, another called it theater. The story had grown larger than the people inside it, and now it moved through streets and screens as if it belonged to everyone. Amara felt that weight, most when she tried to do ordinary things. She stood in the school courtyard, waiting for Chinedu, and other parents watched her from the corners of their eyes. Some looked with sympathy, some with suspicion, a few with envy, the kind that disguised itself as concern. "That girl is lucky," someone whispered once loud enough for Amara to hear. "If that CEO hadn't noticed her, she would still be selling on the street." Amara kept her face still, but her stomach tightened. They thought her survival was luck. They did not see the nights she had counted coins by candlelight, the mornings she had carried her cart like a burden and a prayer. Back at headquarters, Pascal moved through meetings like a man walking on a narrow bridge. Every step required balance. The board demanded reassurance. Shareholders demanded protection. Lawyers demanded silence. The independent unit demanded the opposite. "The hearing is set," Nkiru Balogun told him. "Public oversight session." Then court proceedings will follow. Pascal nodded. Amara will be targeted again. She already is, Nkiru replied. But this time we'll control the framework. The hearing was scheduled in a civic hall neutral ground. Not a courtroom, not a corporate room. A place designed to hold public truth without turning it into entertainment. On the morning of the hearing, Amara dressed carefully. Not to impress anyone. Not to appear worthy. But to feel like herself in a room that would try to redefine her. She chose a simple blouse and a dark skirt. She braided her hair neatly. She looked at herself in the mirror and whispered, "You belong wherever truth is needed." Chinedu watched her from the bed, chewing the edge of his pencil. "Will people shout?" he asked. "Maybe," Amara said softly. "Will you shout back?" She smiled. "No, I'll speak." Pascal did not arrive with flashing lights or loud security. He came with a single aide and a folder of evidence. He entered the hall quietly and took his seat. Cameras followed him anyway. Fame did not require permission. When Amara arrived, the noise increased. Reporters called her name. A man shouted, "Thief!" Another shouted, "Hero!" People pushed forward, hungry for a version of her that fit their own story. Amara did not look at them. She focused on the doors, on the steady rhythm of her steps, on the fact that she was walking in daylight by choice. Inside, the hall was full. Officials sat at a long desk. The independent unit stood near the front, files arranged neatly. Victor Mensah's legal team sat to one side, polished and impatient. Chief Adewale Ajayi's counsel sat beside them, faces expressionless. Victor himself looked calm, too calm. His suit was perfect. His smile was measured. He looked like a man who believed he could negotiate reality. Amara sat near the front with her advocate. She did not sit beside Pascal. She did not want anyone to think she needed his shadow to exist. The chair opened the hearing. Procedures were explained. Evidence would be presented. Witness statements would be heard. The record would be entered. Then Victor's counsel stood. "We acknowledge a tragic accident," the lawyer began smoothly. "But we must caution against emotional narratives. This so-called street food girl has been elevated to a symbol, and symbols distort truth." Amara felt heat rise in her face. She kept it there contained. The lawyer continued. "We cannot ignore that Ms. Iroka was present. She interfered with medical response, and she has benefited from association with Mr. Iroegbu. In such circumstances, motives must be examined." Whispers spread through the hall. Amara's advocate stood. "Objection," she said. "Speculation." The chair allowed it. The lawyer sat smiling faintly. Then Chief Ajayi's counsel spoke. "This entire matter is politically motivated," he said. "Chief Ajayi has served this city for decades. He is being scapegoated for public anger." Amara's hands tightened in her lap. Pascal watched her closely, resisting the urge to step in. He remembered what she had said. "Don't decide my worth. Don't decide my feelings." So he stayed quiet. Evidence presentation began. Call logs appeared on a screen. Payment trails, the fixer's testimony. The driver's recorded statement played in a clear voice that filled the hall. "I was instructed to take the call," the driver said in the recording. "I was told it came from Mr. Mensah's office. I was promised protection." Gasps rippled. Victor's face did not change, but something in his eyes tightened. Then the independent unit presented the intimidation attempts messages, van footage, the abduction of Chinedu. A low murmur spread anger. Now not curiosity. Amara's throat tightened at the mention of her brother. She swallowed hard, keeping her face steady. The chair turned toward her. "Ms. Iroka," he said, "would you like to speak?" Amara stood. The room quieted. Not because it respected her, but because it expected a performance. Tears, maybe. Drama, something easy to consume. Amara gave them none of that. "I didn't plan to be here," she said clearly. I plan to sell food, I plan to pay my brother's fees, I plan to survive quietly like millions of people do. She paused, scanning faces, officials, lawyers, strangers. The day of the accident, I saw a man bleeding on the road. I didn't know his name, I didn't know his power. I only knew he was human. That's why I helped him. A few heads bowed. When the papers came, they wanted me to sign without understanding. I refused. That refusal became a reason to punish me. Her voice remained calm, but it sharpened. They took my cart. They summoned me like a criminal. They tried to humiliate me in rooms where I had no protection. They tried to silence me with fear. She looked toward Victor, then not with hatred, but with clarity. And when fear didn't work, they took my brother. The hall went still. Even Victor's counsel looked down. Amara breathed once. My worth was never decided by my poverty. It will not be decided by your accusations today. I am here because truth deserves a voice even when it comes from the street. She sat. For a heartbeat silence, held the room like a hand around a throat. Then the chair cleared his throat and continued procedure. Victor's counsel tried again, asking questions designed to provoke emotion. Ms. Iroka, isn't it true you refused to sign because you wanted attention? Amara met his gaze. I refused because I cannot read legal language the way you do, she said, and because I have learned that people who rush you to sign are often rushing you into a trap. A murmur approval this time. Isn't it true you have received support from Mr. Iroegbu? Yes, she said. Safety, legal access, transparency, and money. I have received what the process owed me, she replied. Restitution for a destroyed cart. Nothing hidden, nothing personal. The lawyer tried to push. So you admit you benefited? Amara's voice remained steady. If your definition of benefit is not being silenced, then yes. The chair ended her questioning. Finally, Pascal was asked to speak. He stood and looked out across the hall. I built my life around control, he said. I believed it was strength, but strength without accountability becomes cruelty. He turned slightly toward Amara, then back to the officials. The truth is simple. A woman with nothing saved a man with everything, and the system tried to punish her for it. I won't allow my company or my silence to protect that system. The hearing adjourned with no final verdict, only a record strengthened and a public mood shifted. Court proceedings would follow. Consequences would come later. Outside, the air was thick with voices. Amara walked out with her advocate's shoulders heavy but upright. Pascal followed at a distance. As they reached the steps, Amara stopped and turned to him. Do you understand now? She asked quietly. Pascal nodded. Yes, and you're still willing to pay the cost? She asked. His eyes did not flinch. Yes. Amara held his gaze for a moment, then turned away. The climax was close now. The city could feel it. Power was losing its grip, and power never let go without a final fight. The verdict did not arrive with a single gavel strike. It arrived like a slow tide, inevitable, unstoppable, carrying everything loose with it. In the days following the public hearing, the city held its breath. Court dates were announced. Charges were formalized. Names that once moved freely through corridors of power now appeared beneath words like indicted, suspended, remanded. The language was careful, but the meaning was not. Victor Mensa's defense shifted from confidence to containment. Statements were revised. Allies distanced themselves. A resignation letter appeared, polished, defiant, meaningless against the weight of evidence. Chief Adewale Ajayi was denied bail pending further review. His once certain smile replaced by a tight, unreadable calm. Amara did not watch the news. She focused on Chinedu, on school lunches and homework, on the small rituals that stitched normalcy back together. She returned to the transport hub with a temporary permit and rebuilt her stall piece by piece. Vendors helped without being asked. A carpenter fixed a wheel. A woman brought spare pots. The work was quiet, communal, stubborn, Pascal watched from a distance, honoring the boundary she had drawn. At headquarters, the board met again, this time with prosecutors present. The atmosphere was different now. No one argued about optics. They argued about responsibility. "We must issue a public apology," one member said. Pascal shook his head. "An apology without restitution is noise. Then what do you propose?" Another asked. "Structural change," Pascal replied. "Oversight. That includes the people our decisions affect. Independent audits, whistleblower protections that work, and consequences that don't stop at the lowest rung." Silence followed. Then slowly, agreement. The final court session opened on a humid morning. The hall was full again, but the energy had shifted. Curiosity had given way to gravity. This was no longer a story about spectacle. It was about outcome. Amara arrived early and took her seat. She did not carry notes. She did not rehearse lines. She had said what needed to be said. Pascal entered later and stood when required. He did not seek her eyes. The judge listened as charges were read. Conspiracy, obstruction, witness, intimidation, abuse of office. The driver testified in person this time. Voice-shaking remorse threaded through every sentence. The fixer spoke next, bargaining honesty for leniency. When Victor Mensa stood, his confidence cracked at last. He denied intent, blamed pressure, claimed misunderstanding. The judge did not interrupt. When the prosecution finished, the courtroom fell into a silence so complete it felt physical. The judge's voice was steady. "This court finds that the pattern of evidence establishes intent beyond reasonable doubt," he said. "The manipulation of process, the coercion of a witness, and the abuse of power will not be excused by position." Sentences were announced. Victor Mensa was remanded, pending transfer to a federal facility. Chief Adewale Ajayi received a custodial sentence and permanent removal from office. Assets were frozen, restitution ordered. Amara felt no triumph, only release. Outside reporters surged forward. Microphones rose. Questions overlapped. "Ms. Iroka, how does it feel to win, Mr. Iroegbu? Is this the end of corruption in your company?" Amara stopped once. "I didn't win," she said calmly. "The truth did." She walked away. Pascal answered only one question. "This is not an end," he said. "It's a beginning we should have chosen earlier." That evening, the city exhaled. At the transport hub, Amara closed her stall as dusk settled. The rebuilt cart gleamed modestly, not new, but proud. She counted the day's earnings and smiled at the balance. Enough for rent, enough for school, enough to breathe. She felt a presence and turned. Pascal stood a few steps away, hands visible, posture open. "May I walk you home?" he asked. She considered him for a long moment. The man who had once embodied distance now waited without expectation. "Yes," she said. They walked side by side through streets softened by evening light. No guards, no speeches, just the sound of their steps and the city moving around them. "I owe you an apology," Pascal said quietly. Amara shook her head. "Apologies are for words," she replied. "You gave me action. I still want to say it," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't see sooner. I'm sorry the cost was so high." She stopped and faced him. "You didn't save me," she said gently. "I saved myself. You chose not to stop me." He nodded. "Thank you for letting me choose better." They continued walking. At her building, Amara paused. "This is where I go in," she said. "I know," Pascal replied. She hesitated, then spoke. "You once asked what I wanted." "Yes. I want time," she said. "To be ordinary again, to trust the quiet." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll be quiet." As he turned to leave, Amara added, "and Pascal." He looked back. "Come by the stall tomorrow," she said. "As a customer." He smiled fully then. "I will." Upstairs, Amara watched the city from her window. Chinedu slept soundly, school book tucked beneath his arm. The future did not look perfect. It looked possible. Across town, Pascal sat alone in his office and signed the final document of the day one that restructured power he had once guarded too tightly. The accident that had shattered a cart had done something else, too. It had broken open a man's certainty. And from that break, something honest had finally entered. The morning returned quietly, as if the city itself had learned restraint. Amara woke before the alarm, the light already slipping through the curtains in soft bands. For the first time in months, her chest did not tighten with dread at the thought of the day. There were still bills to pay, still questions to answer, but fear no longer led the way. She dressed simply and woke Chinedu, who groaned and then smiled when she brushed his hair back. "You're early," he said. "So are you," Amara replied. "We're walking today." They walked to school together, the air warm and ordinary. At the gate, Chinedu paused. "Will people stop staring now?" he asked. "Some will," Amara said honestly. "Some won't. But we won't stop living." He nodded, accepting that with the seriousness of a child who had learned too much too fast. He ran off waving once before disappearing into the courtyard. At the transport hub, Amara unlocked her stall and set the pots in place. The rebuilt cart felt solid beneath her hands. Not new, never pretending to be, but strong. Vendors greeted her by name. Someone joked about the price of oil. Another asked after Chinedu. Amara smiled easily. She had missed this, the rhythm of work that asked for effort, not courage. Mid-morning, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the platform. Pascal did not arrive with an entourage. He wore a simple shirt sleeves, rolled-up watch tucked away. He waited until Amara finished serving a customer, before stepping closer. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied. "What will you have?" He glanced at the menu, then back at her. "Whatever you recommend." She served him a portion and named the price. He paid without comment and took a seat nearby, eating slowly, respectfully. People watched, curious but calm. This time no one whispered loudly enough to demand attention. "It's good," Pascal said after a moment. She smiled. "It's honest." He nodded. "That's why I came." They spoke about small things, the heat, the buses, the way the city changed color in the late afternoon. They did not speak about courtrooms or headlines. Not yet. When Pascal stood to leave, he paused. "I wanted to tell you something," he said. "The board approved the changes," Good Amara replied. "Make sure they last." "They will," Pascal said. "Not because I want them to, but because they're no longer optional." She studied him. "And you?" He considered the question. "I'm learning to step back," he said, "to listen more than I decide." "Careful," she said lightly. "That can be addictive." He smiled. "I hope so." Days turned into weeks. Amara's stall grew busier, not because of her story, but because of her food. Customers returned for taste, not proximity to fame. That mattered to her. When an interviewer asked to film, she declined politely. "Come eat," she said. "That's enough." Chinedu settled into school again, his laughter returning, his sleep unbroken. One afternoon, he brought home a paper, marked with red corrections and a bright blue star. "I didn't get everything right," he said apologetically. Amara hugged him. "Neither did I," she said, "and we're still here." At headquarters, Pascal dismantled what remained of Victor's influence. He opened channels long closed, invited oversight, long resisted. Some investors left, others stayed. The work was slower, now heavier, but it felt real. One evening, Pascal arrived at the stall, just as Amara was closing. "Walk," he asked. They walked without hurry, the city breathing around them. Streetlights flickered on. A radio played somewhere above a shop, its song drifting down in pieces. "I've been thinking," Pascal said, "about what comes next." Amara waited. "I don't want to rush you," he continued, "or turn this into a story people recognize. I want something quieter." She stopped and faced him. "I'm not ready for promises," she said. "I'm not offering any," he replied. "Only time. And patience." She searched his face. The need to control was gone. In its place sat a careful hope, disciplined by experience. "All right," she said. "Time." They did not touch. They did not need to. Months later, Amara stood at the counter of a small legal space she had rented, with her savings and a transparent grant administered by a civic fund. Not Pascal's company, not his name. The sign above the door was simple. Her name, her work. On opening day, vendors from the hub came first. Chinadu helped serve proud and serious. Pascal arrived last, standing in line like everyone else. When the day ended, Amara locked the door and leaned against it, tired in the best way. "You did this," Pascal said. "I did," she replied. He hesitated, then asked May. "I take you to dinner." She smiled. "You may walk me home." They walked. The city did not cheer. It did not need to. The work of healing rarely announced itself. Later on her balcony, Amara watched the night settle. She thought of the road where a cart had shattered, of the fear that had followed, of the choice to kneel beside a stranger and not look away. She thought of how justice had arrived, not as rescue, but as recognition. Inside, Chinadu slept with his schoolbook tucked beneath his arm, dreaming the untroubled dreams of someone who believed tomorrow would arrive. Across town, Pascal turned off his office light and left the building empty behind him. He carried no speeches, no illusions, only the knowledge that power once shared with truth could finally rest. Amara closed her eyes and breathed. The world was not perfect, but it was hers again.
Sometimes life does not change because someone powerful decides to be kind. Sometimes life changes because someone ordinary refuses to look away. Amara did not set out to be brave. She did not imagine her name spoken in courtrooms or printed in headlines. She simply saw a human being bleeding on the road and chose compassion over fear. That single decision, made without witnesses, without guarantees, set everything else in motion. Not because kindness magically fixes injustice, but because it exposes it. This story reminds us that goodness is not weakness. In a world that often rewards silence and obedience, choosing integrity can feel dangerous. Amara paid a real price for telling the truth. She lost security before she gained justice, yet her courage showed something essential. Dignity does not come from wealth, status, or protection. It comes from knowing who you are, even when the world tries to redefine you. Pascal's journey teaches a different lesson. Power does not make someone evil, but unchecked power blinds. True leadership is not about control or image. It is about accountability, humility, and the willingness to listen when the truth is uncomfortable. His transformation did not begin when he fell in love, but when he accepted that being saved by someone poorer did not diminish him. It revealed what he had forgotten. This is not a fairy tale where everything becomes perfect. It is a reminder that justice is slow, healing is gradual, and trust must be earned. But it is also proof that one honest voice can disrupt systems built on silence, and that compassion, when paired with courage, can change lives far beyond its original intention. If this story touched, you ask yourself, what would you do if no one was watching? Would you help, even if it cost you something? Would you speak, even if your voice trembled? We'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of this story stayed with you the most? Share your feelings and reflections in the comments below. And if you believe stories like this matter,